Okay, we'll start with this. As I predicted, as I expected, Sarah Bormann was able to get herself back in the winner's bracket yesterday in Germany, opposite the ring Argentinia's own Tamara Demarco, very experienced fighter who's been in there with a lot of the solid fighters at or around these weights. This fight took place in the women's minimum weight division, where Senicia Estrada currently reigns as that division's undisputed champion. Flying much lower under the radar than Senicia Estrada is Germany's own Sarah Bormann, a fighter I've been aware of for some time now. Very capable fighter, entertaining, mid-range to inside volume puncher, not big on power, but very big on activity. I've never seen a boring Sarah Bormann fight. Not going to. She makes sure to be busy, be active within around, throwing punches in bunches, crowding the pocket, bearing down on her opponent. Sarah Bormann has always had a lot of size for a minimum weight. Noticeably tall, noticeably long, somewhat strong in the pocket, though as stated, it's not so much single punching power that works for Sarah, it's wearing the other girl out, throwing so much, so often at her opponent, she breaks them down round after round, outworking them. So now that she's back in the winner's bracket, in possession of the IBO title. What's next? The IBO title, for as many years and as many decades as it's been around, it's still not recognized by the Major Four. It's not recognized by the WBC, the WBO, the WBA, or the IBF. You don't need it to be recognized as an undisputed champion at a given weight. It's not really necessary, but it's there. Sarah has it, though I don't expect to see Sarah Bormann in the ring with Senicia Estrada, because as I specified in my previous video, now that Senicia is undisputed, I don't think she's going to stay at minimum weight. I think she's going to move up. I think she's going to drop all the alphabet titles she won, and the landscape at minimum weight is set to change. So one fight that immediately comes to mind. No Castavalle fight? No. A Tina Ruprecht fight. Two-division champion Tina Ruprecht of Germany. She's a German national, the same as Sarah Bormann. Sarah sports a professional record of 18 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 7 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 19 professional bouts. Tiny Tina Ruprecht, comparatively, she sports a professional record of 13 wins with 1 loss and 1 draw, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 15 professional bouts, even though she's been in there with better fighters than Sarah Bormann has, and she's been a champion at 2 weights, she actually has less fights than Sarah Bormann. Last in action in January of this year, opposite the ring, then unbeaten Fabiana Baticki at atom weight for what was Fabiana's WBC title. Tina won the fight the way I said she'd win the fight. It's a quality over quantity argument when it comes to Tina and Sarah. Tina doesn't have as many fights as Sarah, but she has fought better fighters than Sarah has. She beat unbeaten Fabiana Baticki. She beat Yo Castavalle some years ago. Dropped a decision to Senicia Estrada some years later, but there's no shame in that. Especially since she's already rebounded off that loss to Senicia by beating Fabiana Baticki to effectively become a 2-division champion. I would like to see Tina move back up in weight to take on Sarah Bormann in a domestic clash of German nationals. Sometimes domestic fights are the best fights. Neither fighter would have home field advantage, as both fighters are German nationals. These are 2 of the more talented fighters at or around these weights that I feel don't get talked about enough, Sarah Bormann and Tina Ruprecht. And I feel that as the landscape changes at minimum weights and those alphabet titles become once again available for other fighters to fight for them, maybe Tina can move up and pick up a title, and maybe Sarah can pick one up too. And maybe you could do a unification match between them. Though you may be thinking to yourself, if Tina has been in there with better and more world-class fighters than Sarah has, what makes this fight so interesting? What, that they're both from Germany?
Ist das alles?
No, there's more. Part of the reason I want to see the fight is because of the stylistic clash, where tiny Tina Ruprecht has a stylistic advantage over Sarah Bormann. Sarah Bormann has a noticeable physical advantage over Tina Ruprecht. Tiny Tina Ruprecht, she didn't get that name for no reason. Tiny Tina is very small for minimum weight. She always has been. You could definitely argue that she's a lot lighter on her feet, more athletic, and a more dynamic boxer overall, with more layers to her game than Sarah Bormann, whereas Sarah is comparatively more simple. She's a mid-range to inside volume puncher that stays in character. You have to question, given that Tina is so much smaller than Sarah, can she actually work around her? Because Sarah's not going to throw singles or just ones and twos. She's going to throw punches in bunches.
So even if Tina has a stylistic advantage, can she work around Sarah's size advantage? I think it makes for a great fight.
4-star fight. I consider it a 4-star fight even if it doesn't have a 4-star profile.
4-star marquee value, it's a great fucking fight. If you make it stylistically, it will entertain.
That's not saying that this is something that they're working on or something that I heard about. I'm just saying, because they're both so close in weight, because they're both there, why not make it? We then come to what will be tomorrow morning's super bantamweight undisputed title fight between the reigning champion Naoya Inoue and the challenger of Mexico, Luis Nery.
Tomorrow morning in America.
Tomorrow night, if you're in Japan, veteran boxing scribe Steve Kim, otherwise known as Stephen Kimothy, said, "No surprise, I like the monster in this one. A factor is not just his own talent, but his history versus southpaws. He's absolutely slayed them throughout his career. Narvaez, Payano, and more recently, Tapales. And I would describe Nery as a swarming southpaw, more than a slick one, which makes him dangerous, as I think he will land some leather on Inoue, but he also throws wide punches, which will leave him vulnerable to a sharpshooter like Inoue. I was there when Figueroa stopped and dropped Nery with body shots. Well, Inoue has one of the best left hooks in the game. Expect a concentrated attack downstairs in this contest. Also, I was in attendance when Nery went to war with Avzat Havanesian last year. Great fight, but again, he got touched a lot in scoring a late KO. Nobody has the blend of power and speed of Inoue. Just watching some of the pre-fight footage from Top Rank, Nery looked a bit drawn and drained. I know fighters get plenty of time to rehydrate, but this time around, I think it may actually matter. Nery is an accomplished boxer, 2-division belt holder. He will have some moments, but Inoue seems to be a special one at this peak. I like Inoue in 6 rounds.
The intrigue.
I like Inoue to win too. I like him to win by way of knockout. But what's intriguing is that this fight is taking place at the same location that the biggest upset in all of boxing, the Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas upset.
The Tokyo Dome.
This fight is happening where that fight happened. Will this be the site of yet another massive upset in the sport of boxing? Most are favoring Inoue to win the fight in spite of the fight's location.
But that's the intrigue.
What sells it? That you never really know until you know, and the backstory that Luis Nery is once again traveling to the land of the rising sun, and he himself has pulled off a very big upset before, some years ago, against Shinsuke Yamanaka.
That's why he's been talking all that shit in the build-up.
But I'll tell you that Naoya Inoue is no Shinsuke Yamanaka. Great fighter that Yamanaka was. Inoue is several levels above that fighter, what he was when Luis Nery fought him.
What he knew he is.
Pound for pound, number one on some lists. Yes, he's regarded as the number one pound for pound fighter in the sport, depending on who you ask. A 4-division, 2-time undisputed champion, sporting a professional record of 26 wins with no losses, no draws, 23 knockouts. The vast majority of Inoue's fights have ended by way of knockout.
Well, you could say that about Luis Nery.
Luis Nery sports a professional record of 35 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 27 knockouts, having been knocked out at least once in 36 professional contests. That was the Brandon Figueroa fight.
So they can punch. They can both punch. They both have power.
They both have a hefty knockout ratio, hefty knockout percentage, but Inoue is more than just a knockout merchant. He is a skilled boxer, and he's very fucking fast.
Durable, too.
The left hooks that he absorbed in what was the first Nonito Donaire fight would have floored, would have stopped most other bantamweights at the time, whereas he took them, fought through them, fighting with a fractured orbital bone, and still going on to win the match, won the subsequent rematch by way of knockout in much easier fashion. So not only is Inoue a strong puncher like Luis Nery, but he's got speed, he's got athleticism, ring savvy, ring IQ, and durability. Thus, I like Inoue to win the fight.
Whether it's a well-placed body shot, like the one Brandon Figueroa landed on Luis, or a right hand down the pipe, down the middle, because Luis is a southpaw, and southpaws are susceptible to the right hand.
More so than orthodox fighters.
Inoue is the logical choice.
It's a solid fight. It's a solid fight on paper. It's a 3-star fight that, while it lasts, it will yield a pleasing aesthetic that if you're up, you're eating your breakfast, and you want something to watch, you can watch this.
It's a pretty good card overall.
Now, I don't envy those of you that are watching this fight from the West Coast. You guys are going to have to get up a lot earlier than the ones on the East.
But if you're already up, it's something to watch.
And unless Naoya Inoue right now is snorting lines of coke shacked up with geisha girls in his hotel room, I'm not expecting an upset.
Like what we saw in Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas, because that's what he was doing the night before the fight.
The guy was on the slopes, knee-deep in Japanese pussy right before he fought Buster Douglas, whereas Naoya Inoue is a more consummate professional. He's disciplined. You know that about him. In between fights, you see, he takes care of himself. He doesn't balloon in weight or do anything stupid.
He's focused.
He's not taking this fight lightly. Even if he himself doesn't have a bone to pick with Luis Nery on a personal level, he knows that the fans do. Those in attendance want to see Inoue exact vengeance on Luis Nery for what he did to Yamanaka in their 2 fights. It's the only reason they lifted the lifetime ban. To some, this may seem like a tune-up fight to Inoue, and maybe it is. But how many guys do you know can put 55,000 asses in 55,000 seats with a fucking tune-up fight?
We're just a few hours away from it. I've got Inoue.
And finally, on the heels of this weekend's super middleweight action, 3-time undisputed champion Clarissa Shields took to social media with her reaction to the fight, and she said, "Man, Munguia fought harder than most of Canelo's opponents. Good scrap, but the king still reigns."
She's right.
That's saying a lot, because I don't often agree with things Clarissa Shields says or things Clarissa Shields does, but I have to agree with her here that Jaime fought a lot harder than, say, Jermell Charlo,
Yeah.
a fighter who for some years was widely perceived as being better than Jaime Munguia.
Some people thought Jermell would beat Jaime Munguia. I think that would all depend on where and when the fight took place. Perhaps if it were at 154.
Many years ago when Jaime was a much greener fighter, but here and now, I might actually pick Jaime to not only beat Jermell Charlo, but also Demetrius Andrade. All of the talkative chicken shit fighters.
The slick fighters.
The high IQ guys. The boxers.
The ones who think that the only way to win a boxing match is to fight like you've got fleas in your ass?
Yeah, because the account of himself that Jaime Munguia gave against Canelo Alvarez did more for him in defeat than many of their fights did for them in victory. He showed he can put on a show. He can make it a fight. He can weather a storm, endure hard punches, hard shots, pick himself up off the canvas, and keep going. Keep making a fight of it, as opposed to Jermell, who spent years calling out Canelo, many years, running his fucking mouth, just so that when he gets in the ring with Canelo, he can spend 36 minutes running from him.
That's not running. That's boxing.
My ass. What was a byproduct of the Mayweather era, Floyd Mayweather, who towards the tail end of his career started fighting more like a pure boxer instead of a boxer puncher. He was fighting more like a pure boxer towards the end of it, which spawned a lot of Mayweather clones, a lot of Sugarfoot fighters who can't crack a fucking egg.
You can't punch.
You think you're slick because you're staying on your toes for 36 minutes trying to stay on the outside, but it's because you have no ability. Mid-range to inside. Yes, for a long time now, these kinds of fighters were regarded as being high IQ fighters or highly skilled fighters.
Bullshit.
If the only way you know how to fight a fight is to take a tour of the turnbuckles, act like you're on ice skates for 36 minutes, you're just as limited as the next guy because you're limited to boxing from the outside, since you can't do nothing mid-range to inside, and I've long maintained this.
So you have two fighters that fought the same guy and lost to the same guy. But one guy's loss is viewed as being more respectable than the other guy's. Why?
Well, because one guy made a fight of it, gave it his all, and showed that in the fight, and the other guy fought like a chicken shit.
After running his mouth.
For years, Jaime is best described as a pleasant young fellow, doesn't really say much outside of the ring, doesn't trash anybody, doesn't trash talk, whereas Jermell is the polar opposite.
All he does is talk shit. Him and his brother.
It's the same with Demetrius Andrade. It's the same with him. All he does is talk shit.
So that when it's actually time to get in the ring and time to fight, you can fight like a chicken shit?
One of the subscribers here on the channel that goes by the name Triple H said. Low IQ brawler who throws the jab for one round and right back to being low IQ brawler the next round. Don't tell Canelo is going to fight the low IQ boxer next. Baloney, or whatever his name is. Regardless, Morrell and Gilberto Benavidez both beat the low IQ brawler and boxer, so either one of them would have been better to fulfill a mandatory.
He's trashing Munguia.
Yes, he is. And perhaps that might be permissible if this guy weren't so high on Demetrius Andrade. He thinks I forgot. You were prepping up that fucking hype job. I'll bet you right now, if you put Jaime Munguia in the ring with Demetrius, Jaime stops him.
You think I forgot?
So what does that say about Demetrius if he can't deal with a quote-unquote low IQ brawler? Because I'll put up money that Munguia beats that fucking hype job.
And Jermel. And Jamal.
My previous video, we talked about American xenophobia and how these days it takes the form of
bigotry,
sentiments against the Japanese fighter or sentiments against a British fighter. But before it became about any of them, American xenophobia was focused on the Mexican fighter, the slow-footed plotter, as many Mayweather fans used to like to say.
Oh yeah, they used to disrespect Mexican fighters all the time.
Now maybe that was easier to do when you had a Floyd Mayweather around, a generational talent, and I'll never take that away from him. But his era gave rise to a lot of bigotry and linear sentiments towards foreign fighters, Mexicans included. So they look at a Jaime Munguia and they tell themselves, oh, well, he's so simple. He's not dancing around the ring on ice skates. He's a low IQ brawler.
Yeah, he is a brawler.
But he'd beat the shit out of those Sugarfoot guys you like. I'll tell you that. He'll beat the shit out of Andre. He'll beat the shit out of the Charlo brothers, both of them.
I'll take that bet.
Because they're not made out of the same stuff he is. In spite of what are decent fight mechanics, a decent jab here and there, and decent movement, those guys are soft as baby shit.
Those guys talk tough where Jaime is tough.
Jaime doesn't have to fight like a pussy for 36 minutes to go to distance with Canelo, where Jermel, he does.
And get a whiff of the souped-up U.S. Olympian and Demetrius Andrade, who doesn't have a signature win across 3 divisions.
Not a single victory over a single fighter worth remembering. Just saying, if it's all right to take shots at Jaime Munguia for putting up a fight and making it a fight, it's fair game for me to take shots at them, because I don't even think those guys beat today's Jaime Munguia.
Maybe you need to reevaluate what you think boxing is.
Because it seems like a lot of guys have got it in their head that the only way to box and the only way to win a boxing match or look good in one is to fight like you're stepping on hot coals, running around all over the place.
The era of the Mayweather clones is over.
Not even that Floyd Mayweather was on his bike as much as these guys are today.
He actually wasn't. He spent a lot more time in the pocket than the Mayweather clones do.
But you know, I think Jaime did a good job, gave a good account of himself, and his stock is on the up and up.
Put him in there with Andrade. I bet you Andrade don't go to distance.